Welcome to the Coach's Table Podcast, where coaches come to grow personally and professionally through real-world application and online education.
What is going on? Happy, glorious Friday. Man, February is flying by. And what's exciting about that, though, is we're going into March Madness. And I absolutely love March Madness. I think it's probably one of the best months of the year. A lot of fun things happening in March Madness. Big upsets that just happened last night with college basketball, if you pay attention to that. Obviously, I do. That's my space. And I think kind of most people do if you pay attention to sports. But anyways, for today, guys, before we get into the episode, if you get value from the show, if you get educated, if you get entertained, if you get encouraged, do a huge favor, share the show with somebody. If you're watching on YouTube, because we have all the full-length episodes on YouTube, do me a huge favor, drop a comment below, hit that subscribe button. Would really, really appreciate that, because today's guest, I think, is going to bring you a lot of value, I think a lot of laughs as well. We were just talking for close to 40 minutes off air. I feel like we could just talk all day for that. And a lot of the stuff that we talked about should have been recorded, but it's all good. So we'll try and bring you some good stuff today. So, Tom Broback, what is going on, man?
Hey, thanks for having me. Appreciate it, Kendrick. I do want to talk about March Madness.
Yes.
I'm going to give you a quick story off the bat. So last year, my brother moved to Lawrence, Kansas, and my other brother and I, we went down to see a Jayhawks game.
Yep.
And they played Kentucky. So it was like an awesome game, awesome atmosphere. Game day was there, like crowd was rocking. It was sick. And Kentucky blew them out by 20 points. Like the whole game was not close. Like it was just like absolute like balloon deflate. And so like we go home, we're like, yeah, we saw the best team in the country, Kentucky, tonight. Yep. And then the tournament comes around and Kentucky loses first round to St. Peter's. And then Kansas goes on and wins it. So we did see the best team in the country. It just happened to be the team that lost by 20 that night.
Yeah.
But I picked Kansas to win the whole thing.
You did.
Because it's like I saw them. Like my brother's down there. Like he's like a pseudo Jayhawks fan now. And I was like, you know, like they got like, these two wings that are really good, and they got some guys. And I know the one time I saw them, it looked terrible, but I ended up in Kansas in the whole thing. So I'm pumped for March Madness this year, because last year was such a fun, especially with that Final Four, with Duke, North Carolina, Villanova, Kansas. It's like, how do you beat that? So no, that was my March Madness 2022. I don't know how 2023 is going to beat it, but I am absolutely pumped this time of year. Who you
got winning? Are you willing to put somebody down?
Not yet. I haven't watched enough teams. I saw Purdue lost last night, so from Minnesota, you kind of want that Big Ten to finally get one. But I don't know if Purdue's got the team this year. They definitely got some good guys.
There's some guys,
but we will. You know, my Gophers. They're still in that rebuild mode. They still got new coach. Ben Johnson's trying to figure things out, but probably not going to be playing in March at all. So we will see what happens. Do you have an early favorite?
Yeah. Okay, so I really like the way Houston's playing right now. I think they're playing really well. Yeah.
And the Final Four is in Houston, so that'd be a great story.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know their strength coach there. He's awesome. For those of you that listen, you know who it is too. He's such a great dude. Alan Bishop, that is. So he's a great dude. He's a great coach. They're doing great things there. So maybe slightly biased towards that a little bit. But if you look at the overall play of their basketball, I mean, they're like number 2 or 3 in the nation right now. Like they're playing really, really well. And they just they won last night when I watched that game. And I mean, they're just playing good. They're just playing solid basketball. Who else do I like? I mean, it's hard to say because March is, that's why it's called March Madness, right? But I don't know if you can count out Gonzaga. I don't know if you can count out Villanova, Kentucky, Kansas, like kind of the big teams that have always been in, even though a lot of them right now aren't even ranked, right? Like a UNC or a Duke or Kentucky or something like that. Like a lot of the major powerhouse basketball teams that have been for the last decade, I would say. But at the same time, that's why it's March, man. Like, let's get to Selection Sunday and let's watch some good basketball and crazy basketball, because I think it's just going to be a really good tournament. I think it'll be a lot of fun. So I'm excited for it, but I don't know if I'm willing to put somebody down yet. I like the way Houston's playing. I don't know if I'm willing to put anybody down to say, yeah, it's who I'm hanging my hat on right now. Purdue's playing well. Like, they got some guys. Like, they can make a run, but they're also susceptible, just like anybody is. So we'll see.
And that's what makes March so much fun, is just that who's hot, who hits a bunch of threes, who goes on a run, which team figures it out. And could be anybody this year for real. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, exactly. So my team is Iowa, though. That's my team. So we're playing pretty well, especially Iowa's women's basketball. They're playing fantastic. They're playing really well. So, can't complain about that. But we'll see. I don't know. I'm looking forward to it. But so for those of you that don't know Tom is he's from Minnesota like myself, and I think there's every good strength coach is from Minnesota.
Wow, hot take.
Hot take if you're not from Minnesota. No, I'm just kidding. There's just been a lot of successful ones. There's been a lot of successful strength coaches from Minnesota, obviously elsewhere as well. But so Tom's from the home state, still there, loves it. So kind of tell us a little bit what you do. I mean, I know what you do, but you do online stuff, you do in-person stuff. Kind of tell us a little bit like how you got started, and specifically like you love isometrics. Obviously, that's a large component of it, but what else you got going on there?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been a physical therapist. I graduated PT school in 2017. So for the last 6 years, I've been practicing physical therapy. A lot of basically all of that's been outpatient orthopedics, working with both sports and orthopedic type injuries. I've also done some strength and conditioning stuff. I've worked with middle school, high school population. That's kind of the main focus there. And then in these last few years, I've done a lot more stuff online. I have my own podcast. I've read a couple ebooks, and I started training athletes online as well. And I absolutely love the benefits of both. So like the in-person, don't know if you can ever replace that, but in-person is great if you live in Minnesota. Like if you live in a 20-mile radius of me, like in-person is great. If you don't, we can still work together. We can still connect. We can still learn and grow together. And that's where that online space comes in. And I've met, just like you, I've met so many different amazing people and coaches and therapists and athletes and trainers just by putting my thoughts on Twitter, posting on Instagram, putting out podcasts, connecting with athletes, like willing to train them, things like that, going to conferences, all of that stuff. And the online space, it's so beneficial if you use it right. So many people dwell on the negatives, and there are certainly negatives of my main two are Instagram and Twitter. Like there's definitely negatives for a lot of different people. If you don't use it right, if you don't have limits on it, if you're using it to compare yourself to everybody or to get in arguments, things like that, absolutely understand that. And hopefully that improves in the next 5-10 years as you understand the impact of social media on people more. But for me, it's been so beneficial because even today, it's like this never would have happened if we didn't connect with each other on Twitter. And we never would have had this conversation. We never got to know each other. And that's just a travesty because the world is so much more connected now. And if you can take advantage of that and use that for the betterment of your job and career, but also for the people that you serve, I think that makes so much sense to be willing to do that. Now it's hard. It's hard to put yourself out there because you're open to criticism and judgment, and not everyone's going to agree with you. And you have to learn how to handle that. So some people, they're never going to agree with you. You say black, they're going to say white every time.
Right.
And you have to learn, how am I going to handle that? Am I always just going to argue back? Am I going to ignore it? Am I going to allow some of that criticism to make me a better person? So I focused a ton on the online stuff in the last 3-4 years, and it's made a huge change for me. I've learned so much. I've grown so much. And it's also forced me hey, if you want to make a difference, you got to start doing more. Like you can sit and learn all day. Great. But when are you going to start training athletes? When are you going to start writing books? When are you going to start making your own podcasts? When are you going to start? I just spoke at a conference in Indiana. It's like, when are you going to start putting your face in front of other people and saying your beliefs? And at some point, if you want people to know who you are, you have to put your thoughts and opinions out there. And how you navigate that, it's challenging. And you're going to make mistakes, and you're going to, some days it's like, wow, no one likes my stuff. And other days you get
Yeah.
way too high. It's like, wow, I'm the greatest therapist or greatest coach in the world. It's like the truth
Yeah.
is somewhere in the middle, right? So
Yep.
I've learned a ton doing that, and still enjoying the in-person stuff. Because in person, it just, when you get an athlete or client or a patient who comes in and like they just watched the Super, maybe like they're a huge Chiefs fan, just watched the Super Bowl, saw them win. Maybe they're a huge March Madness fan. Maybe they just had like a really tough day and they just want to like come and vent a little bit. Like those connections have been awesome as well.
Yeah, I have so much to say just off of that. A couple of things though. One, I just had a conversation with a friend of mine, and that's exactly what we were talking about. Like, he's doing super well online, like crushing it online, which is awesome. And he's like, yeah, but I don't think like I ever want to get away from in person. And I was like, I agree. Like, I agree with you so much there. And whether because it's from, that's where a lot of his content comes, or from just like the relationships that you build, and like still being in the trenches doing it every day, if that makes sense. Whereas if you're just solely online, it's not that you're not doing it, but you just miss out on some stuff in person, relationships, dabbing people up, giving hugs, whatever the case may be. And I think that doing both is extremely beneficial. Whether that's, hey, like I only take certain in-person clients, great. Whether that's, whatever the case may be, great, awesome. But if you can start killing it online, then start killing it online. On top of that, I also think that, let's say your following is 2,000, 5,000, 10,000, 15,000 people. Okay. The world is like, what is it? Like 3 billion, 7 billion people. I don't even know how many people in the world. A lot. Like
it's
a
over
lot.
7. I don't know if it's 8 yet. It's definitely over 7.
7 billion people in the world.
Yeah.
Like in the United States, I think there's like 330 million people, right? Like, cool. 5,000, 7,000 people follow you. Like, that's good, but out of 330 million, like in the United States alone, like we're not even talking about other countries. Like, we're just talking about the United States. Like, small towns are considered 30,000 people, right? Like, so the town that I grew up in is 30,000 people, right? So if you have 2,000 followers, 5,000, 10,000, you have 1/3 of that town. People don't know you. So what do you have to do? Like, you have to get out there. You have to get out, put your face out there, put your name out there, and start saying, this is what I believe. This is what I think. These are my thoughts. Here's my results, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. For more people to see you, for more people to follow you, for more people to engage with you. And I think we get so wrapped around the axle, myself included in this, where you drop a post, it gets no love, and you're like, everybody hates me. Or you drop a post and it goes off, right? And you're like, I am the best coach anybody could ever want. Like, you are dumb if you don't work with me. But at the same time, it's like, bro, you ain't even reaching 1/3 of a small town. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's crazy to me. Like, my high school had more than 2,000 people. You know what I'm saying? It's just like, that's why you got to be online, because in your area too, I know where you're at, Minneapolis, but like, there's over 1 million plus people that live there. Well, what if you just focused on that? Like, and you don't need hundreds of thousands of followers to be a successful online business individual. Like, maybe 30 people, maybe 50 people, right? Maybe 10 people. Depends on what you charge, obviously, but like, you don't need to have a 1 million person following. If you do, it probably helps you, but like, get yourself out there more so more people can see you, so more people can work with you, and then focus on the people that really do work with you, and I think you're going to be okay,
It's amazing too, because sometimes I will post something and I'll get, to say 100 likes, right?
Sure.
And it's 100 people, I have no idea who they are, and maybe they're bots, It's like, oh wow, like 100 makes me feel better, whatever. But then like, what if like one of those is you, and you send me a message like, hey, this resonated a lot with me because I went through this, that, and the other thing, and now I feel a lot better, and this really helped me get there. Or like one of my mentors reaches out like, hey, like I really like that post. I have an athlete going through the same thing. Like, can I do this with them? Like the quality of followers, of interactions, of engagements, of people message you, that can really help you feel a lot better. It's like, hey, I'm impacting people that mean a lot to me, who I want to be associated with, who I want to collaborate with, who have taken time to mentor me, and then also like future clients and customers. It's like those people, they're going to end up buying from me. Like, I care a lot about them. I don't care about these 100 people I might you know, maybe they're, like I said, like sometimes it's like, are these even real people? So sometimes like, hey, like what like quality impact? Because it's like when I get one message from like a strength coach or a therapist who like I at least like know of or like gotta know, and they're like, hey, like you're doing great stuff, keep it up. It just means the world to me. It's like that quality part is huge.
Yeah, exactly. And you said something there that I really try to hyper focus on, and that is if this can help one person, right? Like if this episode right now that you're listening to can help one person, I think that's beneficial. If your post helps one person, I think that's beneficial. And now people will be like, oh, it's only one person. You're like, yeah, you're right. It's only one. But what if you change one person's life? You know, like it's pretty impactful, I would say. Like if you're working with athletes and you change one person's life, like it's pretty good. Like I think that's really good. Like I had one coach change my life, and that's why I'm doing what I'm doing, right? Like, you know what I'm saying? So it's just like I think sometimes we try to be like, oh my gosh, it's not that much. And it's just like, well, like it's one person. Like what if you made one meaningful relationship? And what if you did that 5 times a year? What if you had six people that you made like meaningful relationships with, like really, really meaningful relationships with, and that you were then friends with them for the rest of your life? It's pretty impactful, I'd say. You know, that's 6 people. Like, you know, and what if you did that year after year after year? Like that's pretty good, I'd say. I mean, that's me, but other people will say different, and that's okay. But anyway, so interesting. So Tom, recently you got engaged, man. That's awesome.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
so my fiance and I, we took a trip to Europe for the first time. We went to Ireland for 9 days, and then we went to London for 4, and we had an absolute blast. It was such a fun trip. It was nice to get away for a little bit, but we got engaged over there with plans to get married next year, and it was like I always have, you know, fond memories of London. And for anyone looking to travel to Europe, I would highly recommend both Ireland. We went to Ireland and Northern Ireland, and Northern Ireland felt very underrated. It was a really cool city. But Belfast was a cool city. Northern Ireland was a very cool country. And then London was just amazing. There's just like so much. And we couldn't even do, you know, you can be there a whole lifetime and not do everything. And we focused on a few things. We're big Harry Potter fans, so we went out to the Harry Potter studios where they shot the movies. And we did that there. And then we did a bunch of like the history stuff and got outside a bunch. And London's have you been?
Yeah, so we just went to, I was just going to ask you about that. I was fortunate enough, we went to London in October for basketball. We had a tournament there. And so it was really nice. It was so much fun. It was my first time out of the country, which was really cool. And I really enjoyed that experience. And it really made me realize, like, man, we got to travel more. Like just seeing different parts of the world, seeing different people, different interactions, going to something like we went to the Borough Market. Did you guys ever make it there in London?
Yeah, I think you either went there or we walked by it for sure.
Yeah, it's just like seeing how different life is, seeing how they do things. It was just really cool. I had a blast. I had a great time. It was really good. I'm excited to do my next out-of-country visit. I don't know where or when yet, but I really want to do that here soon because it's just like, it just gives you a different perspective, you know?
Exactly. And I really want to go back to London, but there's so many other cities that I haven't been to, so many countries and continents I haven't been to. It's like, well, do I want to put all this going back to London, or do I want to go see some other places first? So, but yeah, no, like London, like we walked around Hyde Park almost every day, and it's so cool to have like that feeling in a huge city where it's like there's this nice huge park where you can be outside, and in London, like we didn't rent a car or anything, like we just used the tube, and it's like you walk more, like it's such easy, you don't have to worry about parking and all that stuff. All that day-to-day stuff when you're on vacation it just is out of your brain. And it's a great time for reflection. Like, what am I doing with my life? What am I doing with my career? Who am I helping? Who am I serving? How do I feel when I'm at home? How do I feel when I'm on vacation? Do those two things, is that good, bad, or indifferent? I spent a lot of time just kind of like evaluating, like, am I looking forward to going back home? And what parts am I looking forward to? Because there's definitely a lot of parts I am. And what parts am I not looking forward to? It's like, why do I have those in my life? Why do I keep doing those? Is there a good reason? Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. And every time I come back, it's like, all right, like new focus, new lens, new perspective, and how can we be better?
And do you think that was when you were thinking this, were you having those conversations with your fiance at the time as well? Because I think that would be so impactful, especially on, you know, your guys' relationship and your marriage that's going to happen here soon. Like, hey, like, here's where we are. Here's where I'm thinking. Like, these are the things about my current life or our current life, our current situation that I would like to adjust. Like, were you having those conversations with her, or is it just more like your own thoughts?
Yeah, so we kind of have the, you know, I would think about the things I do, like my job, my career, my hobbies, that kind of stuff. She would think about hers, and we would kind of interact with that as well, because our paths are now intersected and combined, and we're a team together now. So that definitely happened as well. And I do this with other things too. So like at the top of the show, I talked about that Kansas trip, and it's like I will always remember that Kansas basketball game. And it's like I could go to, you know, a bunch of other games, or I could do like watch a bunch of movies, and it's like all this stuff you forget. Or even I was thinking about this, like I watched a lot of Vikings games. I used to watch every single Vikings game from start to finish. And then a year ago, I was like, all right, top of your head, name like the 5 best Vikings games you've watched. And like, there's always like moments, you know, like that catch and that. But like regular season Vikings games, it's like there's not like so many that like changed my life, right? And it's like I spent all this time doing it, and I still love doing it. But it's like, do I need to do this 17 times a year? It's like maybe not. But can I put a lot of time, effort, and money into these big trips, into these travels, into these? My brothers and I were fortunate enough. We went to the Texas-Alabama game, football game this year at Texas. And awesome game. Way too hot. It was like 95 and sunny. We were just dying. So, and it's like, I'm always going to remember this game. And it's like, this was worth whatever kind of sacrifice and, you know, time and money. But also like, let's do like these big things I remember a lot. And whether it's a big trip, a big game, maybe like a big career change. And I think putting a lot of thought and effort into how do we value, because you prioritize what you spend time and money with, right? Like that's what it kind of comes down to. And if you like, oh, I love to travel, it's like, where you been? And it's like, well, I haven't really been anywhere. It's like, well, do you really love
it's like, you don't love to travel then.
Yeah, and it's not, and again, everyone's in different situations. Some people don't have the time or they don't have the money. But if you do have both, and you're not spending any time traveling, and you're not spending any money when you travel, it's like, do you really prioritize it? But you spend all of your time, like going on like local hikes. Well, then it's like, you should prioritize hiking, because that's what you do. And that's what you spend your time and money with. And that's fine. Right. So no, but her and I, we both were like, hey, we really love like this travel thing. How can we do more of it? How can it fit in our life? What things do we need to adjust to make more of this happen? Because almost, and it's so much fun to talk to other people about travel when you start traveling, instead of saying, oh, I've heard like Greece is nice, or oh, like the Great Wall of China, like it's so cool. It's like, I haven't even been to those. Like, how am I supposed to comment on it? But like when you've experienced it, the stories that you can contribute to each other are so much bigger.
That, and like, ooh, man, you just said so much there that I really, really appreciate. Couple of things. One, my family's, we're the same way. We do games, like that's kind of like our big thing. And when I say games, it's like, hey, we're going to go to a sporting event, right? Like that's our kind of thing. Like we really, really like that. It's particularly like with my dad and his side of the family. We go to like Iowa Hawkeye football games. Like that's like our big like thing, you know? And like I could tell you every game that we've been to together, it's awesome. It's so much fun. It's an entire weekend trip. Like we go there, you know, we drink all day, obviously, and then we go to the game and we have a great time, and then, you know, we hang out afterwards or whatever the case may be, right? And it's just so much fun. Like it's just good quality time for us. Like my uncle played baseball at Iowa. My family's from Iowa. Like we really love the Hawks. And so like for us, that's like a really big deal. Like we really love going to that, and we try and do as many together as we possibly can. But with me being across the country, it doesn't happen very often. So when it does happen, it's like such a cherished event, if that makes sense, you know? and it's so cool and it's so much fun. And like we do similar things on my mom's side. So it's just like a lot of fun from that standpoint. And then we do like a family reunion where we don't necessarily we don't travel anywhere for it, but we just have like a weekend, like we were talking about before we started recording, is like a weekend of camping. And it's like a Wednesday night, a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then everybody leaves Sunday. And we're just hanging out. We're grilling. We're doing fishing games. We'll play volleyball. We'll do bags. That's like a really big thing for us. And it's just like a lot of fun, right? And then traveling, I've only been to London. I've been a lot of places in the United States, but like only to London, outside of the country. And I would love to go more. My aunt and uncle lived in Germany for 4 years, and they loved it. Like they almost didn't want to come back to the United States because they just like loved it. It was just so much fun. Like there's so much to do in such a small timeline. Like, you know, they can hop on the train and go, and they're in a different country like in an hour. You know what I'm saying? So like they just loved it. They absolutely adored it. And I think what it does is, to your point, is like it changes like our perspective, and we can actually discuss it. We can be like, oh, my time in London, like, let me show you these pictures or these videos, right, of the Borough Market, of whatever the case may be, when we were at the Olympic Park. Here's when we played. Here's what the court looked like. Like, you can just, like, you can expand on things so much more. And what it does is it, like, brings you back to that state of feeling, like, when you start talking about it. And then you get super excited about it because, like, you probably had a really good time. And that's how people kind of get that travel bug, if you will. And they just love doing it. And I really enjoy doing it. And I want to do it more. But, yeah, it's really interesting. People are like, oh, I love to travel. It's like, do you travel? It's like, well, I went 25 minutes away from my house. It's like, that's not traveling. Like, you know, I mean, that's not traveling. What are you talking about, right? So I just think experiencing things is so much more meaningful and impactful than saying, oh, I would like to. Like, yes, like go. Like, get out of your hometown, get out of your home state, do something different, check it out. Maybe you'll love it, maybe you don't. But at least you have something to say, like, you've been there, you've tried it. And if you did love it, keep doing it.
When were you in London?
October. Oh, no, November. Excuse me, November. We went for Thanksgiving.
Oh, okay, I was there in October. So I was going to say, were we there at the same time? But you're in November, so a little bit later then.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, it was really cool. We had Thanksgiving in London with the team, which was awesome. It's probably like a once-in-a-lifetime experience. So it was really cool to be a part of that.
Yeah, I can imagine. And then just like the stories that you have, like, hey, remember when we were, you know, walking down. I don't remember a lot of the streets in London. Like, I don't know what their famous street was. But it's like, hey, like, remember we were walking to a restaurant and, you know, Jimmy did this and then, you know, Tim said that and things like that. But it, those experiences when we travel with people. Yeah,
exactly. It's like, do you remember when we went to Big Ben and almost missed the bus or whatever? It's just like,
right.
You know, like,
and sometimes it's like the silly. It's just like the silly, like when we were in Belfast, like we got caught out in the rain, and it's like it was terrible. Like we're walking around trying to find stuff to do, and I'm like, why are we doing this? Like I'm gonna pour it on. Like it's Belfast, it rains, I get it, but and like it's just like it wasn't fun at the time. But like I remember, like we talked about that. Like, remember we walking on the rain, and we found it's a really cool bar, and then we met these cool people and stuff. So
I also love in London particularly, like the way that they talk. Like, you know how here in the United States,
the accent, it's A+.
It's so good. It's so good. In the United States, you know, we say like bro or dude or bruh. Like, yeah, that's cool. But like when you say bruv, like that just hits different. Like, hey, bruv, and you're like, yo, what? Like, it just hits different. It just sounds so cool. And the accents are awesome. I loved it. I'm not gonna lie, I loved it. I could talk for hours about it. I loved it. So it was really cool.
It's fun when you travel. You pick up things on that. Like, oh, maybe they have like they put something different with their meal, or they have these like different slang, or they have like a different like nighttime routine, or a different sense of like how far things. You know, it's like, oh, that's not very far. It's like, oh, it's kind of like it's an hour walk. It's like, oh, we do that every day. It's like, oh, okay. You get that again, like we keep talking about, like perspective, appreciation, different lens, and it's good because we get in our own. Sometimes I get so much in my own bubble. It's like, oh, the whole world works this way. Whether it's like the food that I eat, or the TV shows that I watch, or going to work, it's like the treatment philosophies I use, or the training philosophies I hear by, and then you hear something different. It's like, wow, okay, there are many chapters to this book, and I'm just on one chapter. Let's go to different chapters, see what's up going there. And it's hard not to like skip around too much, because you do want to have like an identity and a routine and some semblance of who you are, but it's good to get challenged every once in a while. Like, why do you do what you do? Why do you believe what you believe? And why do you, why do you like come home and watch Netflix at night? It's like, oh, like it's fun, but I guess there's other things I could do. Like get back into reading more, doing puzzles, or playing like a pickup league at night, things like that. So I like the challenges, because sometimes I get in a little rut, and I need people to be like, hey, like, why do you do what you do? And to be able to answer why with a really good why, it takes a lot sometimes.
Mm, absolutely. No, I agree with that. I think that's really, really important, and really questions that people should start answering. Have you ever heard of the 7 whys? Do you know what that is? Are you familiar with that?
So I listened to a podcast with it was Austin Yoakum's podcast with Bobby White. I think he said like the 5. It was like 5 whys, like 5 layers of why, and you ask 5 different layers to get to their like real why. Is that similar concept? Yeah,
same thing. Exact same thing. I read this one from Dean Graziosi. He's a really good dude, but yeah, his was 7. And it was just essentially like you ask somebody why 7 times. Hey, Tom, like, why do you like doing physical therapy? Oh, I like it because I get to help athletes. Yeah, like, why is that important to you? Like, and you just keep asking why, right? Like, and then after the 7 or after the 5, like you get to the core root of it. And that's, the person's like, why, right? Which is awesome. And I think it's so impactful and powerful. And when I read it in Dean's book, I actually was crying when I read it, because it was like that impactful. When I read it, I was like, holy cow, like this is mind blowing. And I think we gloss over some stuff like that, but it was really cool. I've never done it. Like I've never had somebody asking me that, which I think would be cool, but like understanding it is really cool. And then to your point of like, why do we go and watch Netflix, right? Like, because we're probably like trying to check out of something. You know what I'm saying? It's just
exactly.
Like, man, like,
I'll do this drill with students. And like, why do you want to go to PT school? And they just go like laterally with their answers. It's like, I like sports. I got hurt. I like helping people. I'm like, you're not saying anything. You're also saying nothing unique to you, because a million people get hurt. Like your story's not unique, so you're not going to separate yourself. But also like you're not like, you like sports. Why do you like sports? They're fun. Why are they like? I know that. Like I know those two. Why are they fun? And it's at first it's hard, because it's like if they don't know you, it's like, what's this guy getting at? Like I don't want to talk about. So I always say like you have to get to an emotional why. Like get something that actually like makes you emotional, because then that's a real why. Not I like sports, or I want to be famous, or I want to make a lot of money. It's like, cool. Why do you want to make a lot of money? Well, we didn't have a lot of money growing up. Okay, so how did that make you feel? Well, there's one time at the store, and my mom couldn't buy milk, and I was really sad for her. It's like, oh, so you're sad for your mom, okay? And it's like, what's your relationship with your mom like? Well, she does everything for me, and I just want to like get back to her. Okay, now we have gone somewhere. All right, it's like beyond this surface level stuff. So some people just go like laterally with it. It's like, okay, you gave me 7 whys, but they're basically all the same. Like you didn't get depth with it. And to get depth, I think you really need to get emotional. You don't have to physically cry or get angry or anything. Right. But give me like a real answer. And it's hard, because it took me forever to like figure this out, and it took me forever to like be vulnerable and talk about it. But let's get to a real point here, right? Like let's actually like if you're gonna go to PT school, it's 3 years of grad school. It's tens of thousands, if not over $100,000 investment. And then it's a lot of work, and it's a lot of, it's also hard because all of your friends are going to be working while you're still in school, and you're choosing to be in more school. And you're going to have times where it's like, I don't want to do this. I'm studying on Sunday night. All my friends are hanging out watching the game, and they're all making way more money than I am. Like I'm paying money still. So you have to have a better why than I like sports, and I hurt my knee in 10th grade. And that was, and I say this because that was my whys, and they were terrible. It's like, whoa, I didn't really explore this enough. And the sports thing is hilarious because it's like, okay, you like sports, cool. Why don't you want to be a sports coach? Why don't you want to be a strength and conditioning coach? Why don't you want to teach at a school in their athletics department? Why don't you want to be an athletic trainer? Like, there's a million different, like, the sports thing doesn't narrow down to PT because there's a million different things sports-wise. And probably a lot more things that are more easily connected to sports than PT. Most PTs don't work with athletes. Even if you work in orthopedics, a lot of orthopedic therapists don't work with athletes. And if they do, it's a very small portion. So you need a deeper why to do this because it's a huge investment. Same thing with strength and conditioning. Like, don't just say, like, I like to lift weights. Like, cool. Like, there's 330 million people in America, whatever the number is. Like, 30% of those like to lift weights. Like, give me a better why, and then we can figure out where you want to go.
Right. Yeah, 100%. And I think what you said is, extremely impactful. If you're listening, like, go back, re-listen to that, and then answer those questions for yourself. Because I think a lot of people need to do this more, right? As to, like, you need to start answering those questions, like, why? Why is this important to you? Why do you get up every day to do that? And why is it something that is so important to you? Because if you're going to make hundreds of thousands of dollars of investment, not only the financial investment, but the time component of it as well, you need to have an understanding of, like, why that's important. And to an extent, as a strength and conditioning coach, like, you're going to go get a master's degree, 2 years. You're going to do, unpaid internships, right? Probably a year of that. And then you get a job. Well, if you don't have a strong why behind that, and you're spending 12 hours a day working for free, for experience, for references, for whatever the case may be, you better have a pretty strong why for that as well, right? And if you're going to go through that and just say, well, it's because I like to lift weights. Well, cool. Like, yeah, that's not going to get you through. You know what I'm saying? Like, you have to become, like, literally obsessed and infatuated with like, understanding how and why doing certain things can help athletes be better, and then have an infatuation with, like, I want them to be better. And maybe, I mean, there's so many other reasons for that too. Like, you can go deep, really, 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 really deep, and stuff as well. But you have to literally, like, have a very strong why. And if you don't, it's tough. And I kind of reference it to, like, you got to burn the ships, man. Like, burn the boats. Like, if this is what you're going to do it. Like, if that's what it's going to be, then do that, right? Like, whatever that is, do that, right? It's the adjective of go a mile deep, not a mile wide. And you have to go a mile deep on your why, then you have to go a mile deep on your profession as well, and get really good at that, right? Like, it's better to be known for that one thing. Like, I'm really good at X, right? Like, Tom Brady is the best quarterback ever, right? Like, he's really good at being a quarterback, right? Like, amazing. That's his one thing, right? And now he's going to be a fantastic announcer. He's going to do all these other great things, but he spent the majority of his adult life doing this one thing, right? Like, if you can focus on this one thing as for yourself as well, you could probably spend the majority of your life making a good amount of money doing it. And then you can expand elsewhere and, then do more stuff after that. But I think too many of us, and myself included on this, so this is me talking to myself, is we try to do a mile wide first rather than a mile deep.
They try to be great at 10 things at once before they're great at one. It's like, be great at one, and then it's way easier to do all that other stuff because you have, like, that, you're the authority, like, you have that reputation, that positive impact, and then the relationships, the connections, the confidence, it can help bring all those up instead of trying to do all 10 at once. It's like,
correct.
That part is tough. Not to, you can't just, like, oh, I am only, and you have to. So when I went out to Boston and I shadowed with Eric Cressy and I asked about like work-life balance, and I forget his exact response, but it was along the lines of, like, things, like, come in waves, and, like, life is never really balanced, especially when you're in strength conditioning, like, you own a facility, like, you work with pro athletes, like, now you own 2 facilities, and it's like your priorities are going to shift from time to time, But if you have, like, you choose to have a family and you choose to work and you choose to take care of your health, like, you're going to have a lot of different things. And it's like, you can't just like tunnel vision on one thing and let everything else deteriorate around you, because then that one thing's going to deteriorate too. So yeah, if you want to be a great coach or therapist, awesome. But you can't neglect other parts of your life that impact that as well. And you might not be the greatest, like your workouts, like you might not be the greatest lifter ever if you want to be a great strength and conditioning coach. Like something might have to give there. Or you might not have enough time early on to go on a bunch of vacations and do a bunch of family stuff. You should still do as much as you can, but you can't be great at everything. So you have to kind of choose like what's important to me.
Yeah.
This is where like kind of like the why is like priority list. Like what is important to me? Like for me, like my physical health is super important because I've had times in my life where I wasn't healthy and I couldn't do the things I want to do. So I know whatever career decisions I make, whatever personal decisions I make, if it's going to have a long-term effect on my physical health, I'm going to be in trouble. And that might cost me some opportunities. It might cost me some really things I really wanted in life or some really fun things. But I know like, hey, like physical health comes first because I can't do anything if I'm not taking care of me. And other people, it's not the case. Like maybe they never had a problem with their health. Maybe they've never had any health issues. And it's like, I can put that on the back burner and go after this and I'll be okay.
Yeah. It's really funny you said that. I just read something the other day on Instagram and I thought it was so impactful. And it goes to exactly what you just said from the physical health standpoint. It was a healthy person has 1,000 wishes or they wish for 1,000 things. A sick person wishes for one thing, which is their health. And it's just like, man, I was like, holy cow, that's impactful, because it's just like if you don't take care of your body, the one and only body that you live in, and if you don't take care of your mind as well, I'm going to do both of them. If you don't take care of your mind and your body, your only wish is going to be that you take care of your mind and your body, you know? And that starts with what you're feeding yourself physically, doing, you know, feeding yourself, and then what you're reading, what you're watching, what you're listening to, who you're talking to, who you're surrounding yourself with, all that stuff comes into play. And it's really important that you start to audit that. And I'm not saying that if you have a family that you put your physical health above them or anything like that, you need to make those decisions for you. But what I'm saying is you can do both and you should do both. And you should be able to understand that. And the term of work-life balance, like, I think of it as like a seesaw. If I'm balanced on a seesaw, what does the seesaw do? Nothing, right? Like if it does nothing. If there's another, I'm 220 pounds. If there's another person that's 220 pounds on that other end, it does nothing, right? But if one of us is heavier or lighter than the other, then we get this component going, right? And we're just going back and forth between that. And for me, it's like, oh, I got to have work-life balance. It's like, well, Are you sure? Like, do you need to do that? Like, is that something that is really important to you? Because if so, then you're probably just going to be pretty mediocre. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe there's people that are probably really good at this and they're probably look at me and be like, dude, you're an idiot. And you're probably right. But at some point, you're going to put a little bit more emphasis, especially as men. I think we put more emphasis in our work. And we're prideful of our work and we want to be the best. And I think there's positives to that. And then I think some of us, you know, want to be really good family men. I think that's awesome. Like I'm really looking forward to being a husband and a father one day. I take a lot of pride in that. And I'm looking forward to doing that when that time comes. And it's something that like I really would like, right? But, you know, right now at the moment, my career is like, that's what I'm doing, you know, like, well, let's do that. And so it's just really interesting. I don't know, but there's a lot. I think you just got to figure it out on an individual basis for you and figure out like what is important to you in the moment. And I think life comes in seasons and waves is a similar thing. There's seasons of our lives where maybe my faith is the number one thing for me right now. Maybe it was my physical health. Maybe it was my work, like whatever the case may be. So it's just kind of finding that the wave, the season of life that you're in and understanding how to navigate through that. And it's tough. There's not an easy answer to it. It's not an easy answer at all.
No, like when you have big life changes, like you get engaged, you get married, you have kids,
Yeah.
you know, one of your parents dies, you move across the country, you start working with pro athletes, you start your own business, you start going work for someone else. It's really easy to like tell other people what to do when you're not in their position, right? And I'm 31 now, like so I'm a vet, I guess, but in my 20s, it's like, oh, like everyone should do this. And it's like, you don't know what your body feels like at 50. It doesn't mean you're right or wrong. Like but you're assuming. And it's like, and a 50-year-old who works full time and has 2 kids. And it's like, okay, there might be some different suggestions there for what your workouts look like, rather than when you're 22, you work a part-time job, you have every weekend free, and you're in like your physical prime. So a lot of it's like trying not to assume like other people in their roles, like what they should be doing or shouldn't be doing. Not that you can't help them, right? Like I can help parents, even though I'm not a parent, right? But I can't just assume their life is the same as mine, because it's like, have I accounted for every single variable that having kids is probably not, because I haven't experienced it. So I've always thought of that too. It's like when you give advice, especially like on Twitter, I used to like talk about things like I wasn't doing a lot of, and it's like, talk about what you do, because you've not only know like what works, but you also know like what doesn't work. And sometimes knowing what doesn't work helps a lot. And if you're going to talk about other things, get a lot of knowledge, get a lot of like conversations about it, experiment it a little bit. That's why I think if you're a therapist or a coach, like you have to work out. You just, not that you have to be the best like lifter or sprinter or set world records in anything, but I think you just have to know like what working out like feels like. What does it do to you mentally and physically? What are the pros of it? What are the cons of it? What is the time commitment? What's the energy commitment? How does it change your life? It's way easier to talk about, educate, and empower other people to do it when you do it yourself. And I think if you just put a little skin in the game, it makes you understand a lot more. And it's something like everyone should do. It's like everyone should train. You got to figure out a way to train. If you don't like weights, like figure out a way to train without weights. If you love weights, like get in the weight room and do stuff. You like to do sprints, you like to play basketball, like whatever it is, you got to figure out your system and put a lot into it. And it's not, I think
that's huge.
Like there's no one exempt from it. It's like you have to do this. Even if you're very limited physically, or you're very limited time-wise or money-wise, it's like there's always something. And this is why, if we're going to talk about isometrics, this is a perfect time for it.
I was just going to transition there. Yeah.
Perfect. It's like, I just started talking about isometrics because it's like, hey, this is something I use in rehab, getting a lot of good results. A couple of people I look up to, they use them a lot, great results. I'll just start talking about it. And there's other people out that's like, oh, like other people already talk about it. It's like, whatever, I'll start talking about it. And one of the beauties of it is like anyone can do them anytime, anywhere, and anyone can progress them to their level of challenge. So let's say say you're in a car accident and you can't do anything except move your thumb. Sweet, we can do thumb isometrics, flexion, extension, in and out, up and down, circle, whatever. You can start doing that. You're an elite athlete and you're having an off day and like you're not going to go lift, but like you still want to do something, do some isometrics. You're going to get some less next day soreness. You can challenge yourself. You know, you're in a hotel, you have no room, there's no hotel gym. It's like you can do push-up isometric, you can do a split squat isometric. There's like a million different ones you can do, right? So that is one of the beauties of them. It's like people want to make excuses for not having time or energy or effort or space or what. It's like there's not many. There's no, you can't have enough excuses not to do these, right? So that is one of the beauties of them, both for rehab and training. It's like we can fit them in anywhere, anytime. Just give me what you need.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and one huge benefit that I think doesn't get talked about enough with isometrics is the mental side of it. So if I'm doing like a long duration isometric, and whether that's for max time, 60 seconds, 3 minutes, whatever the case may be, there is a mental curve that you go through, right? And at first you're like, this is easy. I got this, right? And then about 10 seconds in, you're like, how much longer do I have? Because I swear it's been 2 hours. And then you go through this phase of questioning everything, like questioning your life, questioning your existence, questioning like, can I quit? Should I quit? If I quit now, like, is somebody else going to quit? Like, you literally start to have those conversations in your head. And anybody that's done any of these, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And then you're starting to feel the burn, and then you're like, okay. And then you start to shake. And either one of two things happens just before you start to shake. You either stop because you're like, oh, this is the hardest I've ever pushed myself. Yay, congratulate me, right? Or you like black out and you just essentially let it happen, right? Like, tell me I'm wrong. And you just black out and you just essentially let it happen. And then you just go into this Zen mode and you don't think of anything else. And you're just starting to feel every aspect of your body. And you start to like love that feeling of it. And you're just like, this is amazing. And then, you know, after a certain point in time, your body probably gives out on you, right? And then you're like, gosh, I feel amazing, right? Like that's in my experience, at least. You tell me, I don't know, but that's like my experience when you're doing any sort of isometric, long duration style, max effort time.
I'm going to start calling it the shake and referencing that, like get to the shake, right?
You do though. Yeah.
So a really good tactic for people is to set a time like way beyond what you think you can get. So for a split lunge, I always say like 3 minutes. And what I should do is I should say like 5 minutes, because when you set 3 minutes, like at 2 minutes, you're going to be like, I'm almost there, but I want to quit. If you set 5 minutes, you're going to get through 3 minutes pretty easily, right? It's like, all right, so set that goal a little bit past what you want. And I learned that in high school track. Our track coach would be like, the finish line is 10 yards beyond or 10 meters beyond the finish line. You're running through the finish line to that 10, that 10 foot, 10 yard, 10 meter, whatever that number was.
Right.
And that's what you need to do with some of this. It's like, if you just said like, hey, I need to get 90 seconds on this, like it's going to start being hard right away. And you're probably going to quit before the 90. But it's like, hey, I'm going to set like a ridiculous number. It's like, you're going to hit 90 pretty easily. But no, and that's why when people talk about isometrics, you have to understand like what they're talking about, because if you don't get to that, it's basically like you're trying to get to physical failure without the risk of injury. And if you haven't, like a lot of that is like mentally quitting. Like your body, like when you do the split squat, like your leg's not moving. Like your leg can still do it. Your brain's just like, I'm tired of this. I'm sick of this. It hurts. I want to be done. But your leg is physically can still stand there for a lot longer. So it's like, how do you get, and people are like, oh, I don't like 3 minutes. It doesn't transfer to sport, blah, 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 blah. It's like, all right, we'll add some weight and then do it for 30 seconds. Like get to an appropriate, and I haven't figured out like what exact weights transfer to what exact times.
Sure.
But if you want to do 20-second ones, we better have some heavy weights. You know, don't do a body weight 20 second. It's like, that's not going to do anything. You just get like the little like fluff, and it's like, no, you have to get kind of like our 7 Ys. Like you're just staying at that first Y when you do these short duration isos for small repetition. Like you do one set of 20 seconds. You do 20 sets of 20 seconds. Now we're talking about something different here. But it's like put up these ridiculous numbers and see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. That just goes into life. Like set big goals and see what happens. But so talk to me about the differences for people that don't know. There's a difference between a yielding isometric and just a regular isometric. Like talk to me about the differences between those two and what people or overcoming isometric. That's what I was thinking of. So you have yielding and overcoming. Talk to me about the differences between those two. What are the purpose of them? When should we use them? Kind of give me the details on those.
Yeah, absolutely. So with isometrics, you can do like 2 different things. And I have this presentation that I did in Indiana, and then I will do a similar one at Mike Boyle's gym in a few weeks. Is you can either create the force or you can resist the force. So when you are resisting the force, you are preventing yourself when you're resisting the force, you're fighting gravity. You're preventing yourself from falling, from letting go, from falling off the bar, from crashing to the ground. Like, you are resisting gravity, right? So when you do that, you're holding a lunge, you're hanging onto a bar, you're holding a certain position, and you are fighting gravity in that sense, right? And those are for those like longer duration ones I like to use. Because with those longer ones, it kind of works on that mental aspect, right? Of how much can I endure? How much can I go before, like, is my brain going to quit before my muscles? And my brain's always quitting, something's going on there, right? And those are like you're yielding to the force of gravity, right? So think about like gravity is like the victim. You can also use like weights too, like if you want to hold weights, things like that. And I like those a lot because especially the dead hang from a bar, because either you're doing it or you're not doing it. Like it's pretty like a lot of isometrics. Either you're doing them or you're not. So it's like once you're done, like it's obvious because you have to let go or you drop, things like that. And then the overcoming ones, like you are creating the force. So let me just take one step back. The yielding ones, like you are resisting force. So think of like Superman stopping a train. Like you are trying to stop the force coming at you. Gravity's pushing you down. With the overcoming ones, you are creating the force. You're trying to push yourself into something. So like you are pushing up in like a mid-thigh pull where like the bar is under safety arms and you're trying to pull that up against an immovable object, right? So you are creating the force, and that is like Hulk. Hulk smashes people, right? So he's the one creating the force. Those ones, if for most purposes, will be like short in duration because it's hard to hold max effort force for a long period of time. And those, if you're new to those, I've seen like you get a little bit more kind of soreness with them. So kind of picking and choosing when to go with those, whether you're in season, preseason, postseason, things like that, can all make a huge difference. So I usually am talking about the yielding ones. How can we hold a position? Because a lot of people, they've never done isometrics. It's easy to teach, easy to learn, hard to screw up. I think in my experience, I don't know what the research shows, but in my experience, it helps better with pain when you are yielding rather than trying to do the overcoming. But maybe I need to do more overcoming, and I would change my mind on that.
Sure. Yeah, I think a good flavor of both is obviously super beneficial, right? So for those of you guys that are listening, overcoming is you're going against an immovable object, right? So like the IMTP, which is your mid-thigh pull, or I really like the hide-ins up against a wall. So it's like a lateral bound essentially, but you're not bounding, you're pushing up against the wall.
Great one too.
Really like those as well. Yeah. I think those are great. I love those are kind of like and then obviously like, you could do your safety bar squats and stuff like that where, you're starting to get into the yielding component where I'm holding a split squat with a safety bar on my back and I'm holding it for 20 seconds, whatever the case may be. Or I really like the barbell in a split squat stance, the barbell. So the barbell's on the floor and then like I just pick it up. And I'm in a slight bend and I'm just like putting all that weight on the front foot. And then obviously love lower leg, calf, Achilles, isometrics. I mean, I think for those, the Achilles is the strongest tendon in the body, right? And, when we're talking about working with athletes who sprint and jump and stop and do all that stuff, we're talking about something that's really important, and that's the stiffness in the tendon. Particularly in the Achilles tendon, patella tendon, as well, and the quad tendon, because that's what's going to give them the ability to like put their foot in the ground and then allow them to push off in a different direction, and having that stiffness where the tendon absorbs the elastic energy rather than focusing on the muscle to be like, oh my gosh, the muscle has to produce everything. So for those of you that are new to isometrics are very tendon driven, and you'll get some like locomuscular fatigue, but it's not like I'm doing my concentric torsion where I'm really feeling the contraction and like I'm growing this muscle. Like I'm doing the isometrics for the tendon health and strength, and the reformation of that, which is really interesting. And I think more athletes should do them because like you said, more people, but athletes in specific as well. But there's such low risk, like, hey, put your foot behind your hip, lift your heel up, and now drive as much force into the ground as long as you can. Oh, okay. Well, like there's, I'm not teaching somebody anything crazy. You know what I'm saying? Whereas if I'm talking about cleans, or if I'm talking about Olympic variations, or I'm talking about the details of sprinting, which are all great stuff, but there's a lot more education. There's a lot more repetition. There's a lot more of that going on rather than like, cool, get in a deficit push-up position and hold for as long as you can. Hop on the dip bar, hold as long as you can. Get a pull-up hang and hold as long as you can. Pretty simple. Pretty simple. Not hard to teach,
Exactly. And that's why I like using them with patients a lot. It's like, this is easy to teach. You can start doing them at home. I'm not worried about you using the right technique and things of that nature. And also, with most things in our field, it's not like either or. It's like, should I only do isometrics, or should I do strength training? It's like, well, isometrics is just like one component of strength training. You have like the concentric, like the lifting phase. You have the isometric, where it's like the pause phase, and then the eccentric lowering phase. It's like, this is just one part. Like, I could easily just talk about eccentrics all the time. I could talk about concentrics all the time, right? So this is just like one aspect of strength training. It's an aspect a lot of people either they think it's too easy, and it's never easy. It's really just too simple for them. And they skip it because it's, hey, it's too simple. I don't see the value in it. And I used to skip too. It's like, I don't see the value in doing this. Until you start getting the sets and reps right and the durations. Like, hey, how often are you doing them? How long? What intensity? What position? Things like that. Then you start getting the value in them too. In rehab, I think they're super valuable, and even maybe more valuable than training because of their effects on pain. I see it so much valuable, especially in these tendon issues like you're talking about, to drive down tendon pain. So it's like, if I have to teach you something, if I have 30 minutes and I got to teach you something that's simple, effective, and you can do anywhere, I'm going to probably start with isometrics because that covers all those boxes pretty good. So that's why I've been leaning towards them a lot. It's like, hey, this is like something that a lot of people benefit from. It's hard to screw up. If you give, like, let's just say we're talking about like a 1080 sprint. It's like, how many people have access to that in the world? Not that many, right? There's value to it. There's immense value. There's a huge cost and access problem to it, right? And if you don't know how to interpret the data, it's like, how much valuable is this to you? So great tool, right situation, but does it apply to the masses? No. So if I am going to talk about that, I better have that audience that's going to benefit from it. My audience doesn't benefit from that as much as they would from like a sprain ankle isometric, for sure.
Sure. Yeah. So speaking of that, of the specifics, because what you said, I think a lot of people fall into that of like, I don't see the benefits of it. Then you said something like, until you get the sets and reps and time and duration right. So talk to us about that a little bit. Like, give us the specifics. Like, if I'm doing an overcoming, if I'm doing a yielding, what are the specifics I should be considering? Where are my parameters?
Yeah. So for the yielding isometrics, I have found a lot of exercises fall in 3 different categories, and it's usually a 45-second hold, a 90-second hold, or a 3-minute hold.
Okay.
And where your ability is and the type of exercise is going to put you in those different categories. So for me, like a single leg wall sit, most people, they get to about 45 seconds and they're done, depending on the depth of the wall sit, right? But most people, if you're at like a 60-degree angle, 45 seconds, like your leg's shaking, ready to go.
Yeah.
Whereas like a split squat hold, that's going to fall in like the 3-minute range.
Sure.
And everyone's like, oh, like what time parameters? It's like, you need to get to a point where you feel uncomfortable. I don't care if it's 10 seconds or 10 minutes. You got to figure it out. And if you don't want to spend 10 minutes, you need to get in a more uncomfortable position to make that time less. And that could be a deeper squat. It could be more weight. It could go from 2 legs to 1 leg. There's a lot of ways to manipulate the variable.
Right.
And this kind of goes back to like Tony Holler's philosophy. It's like, don't compare to others, like compare to your previous self, right?
Yeah.
So whatever ISO you're going to pick, start tracking what you do and start getting better at what you do. Don't compare to me. Don't compare to Kendrick. Don't compare to Johnny down the street. Like, compare to your previous self, and are you getting better? And then when you're getting better, is that better transferring to what you want to improve whether it's pain, strength, speed, performance, recovery.
Yeah.
Because if those aren't matching up, you got to think, okay, like, have I not gone far enough down the road, or am I going down the wrong road? And it's not affecting the variable I want. So I did dead hangs for like a month, and my max pull up didn't change. So a couple different things asked there. Did I not do it long enough? Did I not do enough variations?
Right.
Does dead hangs affect max pull ups? Did I have to do more pull ups along with dead hangs? There's a lot of questions at the end of that. And that's where this part is really cool. You can just experiment on yourself. You can experiment with people you work with. You can ask others what they've done. But at the end of the day, is what you're doing affecting the variable you want? Because, like, unless you're an Olympic lifter or power lifter, or it's like the numbers don't really matter. It's what the numbers are going to do for your ultimate goal. Is it a sport? Is it to physically look better? Is it to is that like an activity? Like, what are you trying? Like, why are you in the weight room in the first place? Why are you coming to rehab in the first place? It's to usually do something else. And if this stuff is helping the other stuff, great. Like, we're on the right track. And if it's not, figure out what's wrong, what's different, or simply, have I not given it enough time? People are like, oh, 2 weeks, I hadn't changed. It's like, yeah, it's been 2 weeks. It's like 14 days. It's nothing.
Yeah.
Do it like 2 years, and now we'll see that change.
Yeah. And that's just like with training, though, too. I mean, so you just hit the nail on the head there. That's just like with training, right? Oh, I've been training for 3 weeks. Can I change my exercises yet? Like, why? Like, you're just starting to get decent. You know what I'm saying? Like, if I do, let's say I have a split, doesn't matter, full body split, you name it, whatever. But let's say I do my day one on Mondays, very common. And I do that 3 weeks in a row. Congratulations. You've done that exercise now for 3 times. 3 times. Awesome. And you're ready to change already? Like, what? You know what I'm saying? Cool. You've jumped 3 times in 3 weeks. Like, why do we need to do something different? Are you making progress? Yeah. Okay, cool. Let's do that. Like, and I fall victim to it, and I think anybody that programs falls victim to it, because you're like, cool, the 4th week in a row, barbell bench press. It's like, can I do something different? You know what I'm saying? Like, just because we get bored. But it's like, no, like, we should just continue doing what we're doing. And to that point, it's just, there's so many people that, oh, cool, I've done this for a couple of weeks. Why am I not making progress? Like, it's just this instant gratification. Like, let me do isos 1 time and I should be stronger than the Hulk. Like, that's just not going to happen. Sorry. Like, you know, I sprinted 1 time. Why am I not really fast? It's like, it's not how that works, you know? Like, so it's just really interesting when that comes to play, you know?
Yeah, we do the same thing. It's like, oh, I started taking creatine, which most athletes should be.
Yep.
Or the research supports. Well, I can't give that advice, but most the research supports most athletes should be. I've taken creatine for 1 week, and my muscles aren't bulging on my shirt yet. Like, calm down here. Yeah. Like, there's a process here. There's a lot of variables that go into that. And I reference a lot of coaches, but I think I heard Eric Cressy, like, he had a stretch of his life for 7 years. He didn't miss a lift. It was like 3 days a week. It was like 3 days a week or 5. I don't know how many days a week it was. He was like, that's how I got my deadlift from, I don't know, it was like from 300 to 600. He's like, 7 years, I didn't miss a lift. Okay. Now that's chess versus the rest of just playing checkers. Like, oh, I worked out like 2 weeks in a row. It's like, all right, sweet. Put in a couple of years and you'll see what you want. Because some of this stuff takes time. And that's okay. It's
so funny you say that, because Dr. Lane Norton said a very similar thing. I don't know if you're familiar with his story or not, but he was like, for 10 years, like, I dedicated my life to training, and that's why I'm like a world record holder or whatever. Don't quote me on that specifically, but you can go listen. He had a podcast episode where he like talked about it, but he's like, 10 years of my life, like, where I dedicated my life to this. Like, that's why I'm really good at what I do. And then another guy I listened to, maybe people like him or not, but Grant Cardone, he's like, I dedicated my life from 30 years old to 50 years old, never went on a single vacation, worked every day of my life. And now he's like a freaking baller. You know what I'm saying? It's just like, Eric Cressy did 7 years of his life, didn't miss a single lift. Like, how many other people do you know that haven't missed a lift in 7 years? How many people do you know that haven't missed a lift in a month? Like, there's so many people, myself included, there's so many people like, I'm just not going to go train today. It's just like, why? It's like, I don't know. Just not going. It's like, wait, what? Like, so yeah, like what Tom's saying, I think is so important is like dedicate not freaking a day, a week, a month, but years to the craft, to, you know, the aspect of it. I was just listening to another guy and he was like saying, like, if you want to do really well on social media and blah, 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 whatever, like dedicate, like don't expect anything for 3 to 5 years. Like don't expect anything for 3 to 5 years. And it was just like, that's a lot. Like if you put out 3 to 5 years worth of content, if you put content out for 3 to 5 years, you should be in a really good spot, right? Like, but he's like, yeah, don't expect anything for 3 to 5 years. I was like, wow, like that's, but there's a lot of truth to that though, too. You know what I'm saying? Like, right. It's really interesting.
Because the first like year and a half, you're just like making mistakes and trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
And learning as you go, right? It's like you don't even account for that time. And then once you get a little traction, it's like, well, sweet. Still like small fish in a big pond. But no, I hate to wrap things up. I screwed up. I didn't give you an end time here. So we're going to have to do part 2 of the podcast because we're definitely not done talking. And speaking of craft and work, I have to go in and see patients today. I got 8 awesome patients, and hopefully all of them love isometrics because they're getting a bunch of those today. So, no, I got to set aside more time because this conversation is awesome. Our being convo was absolutely great off the pod, and sometimes those are like the idea generators, where it's like, oh yeah, we got to talk about this, that, and then you get recording. So, thank you so much for having me on the pod, and again, I got to do better scheduling because I didn't know how awesome this would be, and definitely coming back for round 2.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and that's I'll take that because I mean I think we were talking for like almost 40 minutes prior to even hitting the record button. So appreciate that, Tom. Where can they find you at? How can they work with you online?
Yeah, so I run everything through Twitter and Instagram at Tom Broback right now. So if you have any questions, you have any rehab questions, you have rehab concerns, you just had surgery, you're getting out of surgery, you're trying to avoid surgery, like my DMs are wide open. I communicate everything through there. So just reach out to me at Tom Broback on Twitter or Instagram. You'll have links to my podcast, my ebooks, and all my thoughts, opinions, and videos, posts, things like that. So that is where to find me, and I absolutely love doing this stuff. So you have a simple question, or if you enjoyed listening to this episode, please let Kendrick and I know because we love doing this too, and we want to do more of this in the future. So let us know, and that's the best place to find me.
Yeah, absolutely. Guys, go follow Tom. If you have any questions, reach out to him. He's extremely helpful. Obviously very easy to talk to. We could talk for 3 more hours if you wanted to. Again, real quick, if you got educated, if you got entertained, or if you got encouraged to this, do us a huge favor. Drop a like, drop a comment, and subscribe. If you're watching on YouTube, drop a comment, like Tom know what a great job he did. He'll be back on for round 2. When we don't know yet, but it'll happen. So, but Tom, thank you for your time today. Appreciate the couple hours I've spent with you today. I hope you have a great day at work, and I hope you guys got something for this. So, Tom, thank you, and we'll catch you in the next one.